Guess who's coming to dinner? Guess who's coming to dinner? Here we are, Monday, April 5th, day after Resurrection Day. I hope everyone had a really nice Easter weekend. My husband and I, we went out to lay some flowers at some grave sites for my brother and my dad, and naturally my mom. It was in my spirit to do something like that. But I'm going to tell you, I am very excited about tonight's guest. I'm sorry we don't have dinner, but our conversation will be the entree for the evening. So, Louisville, let me bring to you, by way of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, the one, the only, our Mayor Fischer. What's up, my mayor?
The one, the only, Janice Carter. It's a pleasure to be with you here over our virtual dinner. Can't wait till we have one in person.
Yeah. I want to thank you. I want to let the audience know, not just that we're friends. My connection to you started when you were running for Senate. When I moved back home, I wanted to get involved in some community things since I had been away for such a very long time. And so I went out to your headquarters out at Mid City Mall.
Yeah.
And I did some data entry for you. That was way before you ran for mayor, but we've got a little history behind us. And in inviting you, I felt that maybe I could be a person that could talk to you about some things that maybe some other people couldn't talk to you about, because I really never talked politics to you. We talked about everything else, and we've had a wonderful relationship. And so I'm gonna lead into that by saying, along with that, over the past year, 2020, you had some Black folks upset with you, and I know you know that. So I want to give you the opportunity. There could be a number of different things, Greg. I mean, I had so many topics to pick from that as my guest, I want you to take this opportunity. If there's anything that got misconstrued or misunderstood, or the messaging got muffled some kind of way, I want to give you this moment to maybe clear up some things. You have anything that upset folks that you couldn't explain in a sound bite?
Oh boy. Well,
Is that
just
a
one.
big one?
Janice, let me clarify something. It wasn't just Black folks that were upset with me. There were plenty of white folks and brown folks that were
Oh,
upset with
okay.
me.
Okay. I wasn't sure, but I just knew the African American community was a little upset. But go on.
Yeah, no, what a year last year was, right? From the
Yeah.
pandemic that hit us in March, and then obviously Breonna Taylor's tragedy, and especially when that became more in the public's consciousness when we all saw the horrible killing of George Floyd
Yes.
take place, and all that kind of came together at the same time. And there were two hot spots in the country last year: Minneapolis and Louisville.
Right.
George Floyd, Minneapolis, and Breonna here in Louisville. And of course, there were demonstrations, righteous demonstrations, we call them, taking place all over the country as well, with different people coming with different angles, especially when you go up into the Northwest and you see more of the anarchy movement up there. But it was a time that none of us had lived through before, that's for sure. Some of the folks that had lived through the civil rights marches in the 60s, there were some parallels to that, but not a lot. My hope is that America and Louisville gets it right this time. You know, the Kerner Commission wrote in 1968 that if things continue as the way they are, we will be two countries wholly separate and wholly unequal. And my goal is to take all of the troubles of last year and make us a better city as a result of that. But while all that was going on, very difficult time to communicate, very difficult time for people to understand all the different perspectives that were going on and why decisions were being made. And let me just kind of give you one that's difficult. You know,
Okay.
one of the challenges that we had as a city is how the demonstrations started. They started off in a very difficult way. That first night, 7 people were shot from in the crowd. And so you have to make a decision at that point in time. The crowd's not dispersing. So do you let the people bleed out that have been shot, or do you use tear gas to disperse the crowd so you can go in and save them and take them to the hospital?
Okay. Okay.
And most people are like, well, I never really thought about that before.
Okay.
Because the last thing that you want to do is use any kind of tear gas on your own citizens. But
Right.
what do you do when you have a decision like that? The next night, Friday night, was the night where I'm convinced, and this was a nationally organized deal all over, because it happened in cities all over the country on that Friday night, where there was lots of window breaking, lots of looting that was taking place. And it seemed to my mayor colleagues that this was kind of like an organized mayhem
That was
by,
orchestrated. I believe it. It was orchestrated because I
right,
saw it when I was saying that's all he's doing. One guy was just walking around, just breaking out windows.
right. And him and his colleagues that were all, we could see that were all communicating with each other and moving together, and they knew how to
Mhm.
evade police, et cetera. That was the second night. So this
Okay.
thing, the way it started off was very, very difficult.
Okay.
And then kind of keeping control of all of that was very difficult. So then the National Guard come in, because your question is like, okay, where is this going? I mean, the first night, 7 people shot. Friday night, all types of windows breaking, looting. So, the trend line was horrible. And so that's when you ask for help. National Guard comes in. Of course, that led to the terrible tragedy of David McAtee.
McAtee.
So
Yes.
if there was misfortune that could take place, it was taking place.
Right.
And then, of course, at the heart of the whole Breonna tragedy was, unlike most of these other incidences, let's say like the George Floyd killing, we could see what was going on because there was body camera video. And the lack of body camera evidence in Breonna's killing was at the heart of a lot of the issues. We didn't know what
Right.
happened.
Right.
So it was just a horrible time for the city and for us. And it's one, it seems like now, Janice, well, here we are on April the 5th, that, as I'm out and about in the community, people realize, man, you were in a tough spot. And there weren't a lot of easy answers to help make things work out.
Right.
Minneapolis, 500 buildings burned down. In Louisville, we kept it together pretty much. And I think that's
Right.
a testament to our citizens and the relationship that we had with each other. And we're evolving. Really proud of our advancing racial equity work we're doing. Many of the protesters and activists are now engaged with public process and public dialogue. Just this past week, the Civilian Review Board, we went through a major hurdle on that, where we have activists on the Civilian Review Board. That was important to me because it needs to be credible. And if we
Right.
don't have the voice of the community on there, especially the activist community, it wasn't going to be credible.
Right.
But we had to fight for that and got there. So anyway, we could talk all half hour about this, but I'm just, I'm the same person I always was. We just had a really difficult situation on our hand. And when you have big crowds like that together, 99% of the people there are fine. But it's that 1% that really starts ramping things off. They want the confrontation.
Right.
And then the question is, from a public safety policing standpoint, how do you react? And I can say that over the course of the summer and the fall, I think we, just like many police forces around the country, learned how to de-escalate better. That's all, you always want to de-escalate. So it was a tough time. I'm grateful for the city. I think in the end, we are going to be a better Louisville and a better country because of it. I just hate that Breonna Taylor had to lose her life in the middle of all this. That's the tragedy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, in speaking on that, because I am a child of the civil rights movement, I was here when we had, they call them riots, but we destroyed some of our city, and it never has come back, that part of our city. And I guess maybe that was in the back of some people's minds that, burning our city down did not help us at all. And I don't think it helps any African American community that it goes that far, But we've got a new generation of protesters. My age group was trying to work on with Dr. King. We were trying to work towards a compromise. They are working towards, let's solve the problem. because this is going on from generation to generation to generation. So anyway, because I actually saw really on 28th and Greenwood in 1968, I'm in the crowd and I saw what made the crowd disperse. I saw a little boy standing on the top of the senator's restaurant and he threw a pop bottle down into the crowd. And because the sound sounded like something's happening, but after that, that was just the underlying, that was the light that lit the fuse, because there was already a fuse there. But moving on, I have I told you I have a couple of questions of my own that have bothered me, and maybe you can clear a few things up for me. And one of them is, I'm trying to understand. I don't understand the new sheriff, and I know this is someone that you have to work with. And I know that there was a vetting committee. Is that correct?
For the new police chief?
Yes, for the
Yes,
new
absolutely.
police chief. Okay.
Right.
There was a vetting process. So they vetted 28 people?
Yep.
And they came down to a final decision of, they chose one person to put in front of you as this is who they selected.
Right.
Now, did you have to go along with that selection, or could you have made another decision?
No, I could have definitely made another decision. So it was an advisory panel of 8 citizens that included, let's see, 3 from my office. So it must have been 7. 3 from my office, the president of the Metro Council, David James, Jessica Green, who is over the Public Safety Committee, and James Peden, who's the vice chair. 3 people from my office, and then a community representative. So 6 of the 8 people happened to be African American, and we had 28 applicants. And so I reviewed the top 7, but there was one that clearly stood out as better. We thought better than all the other ones by far, and that was Erica Shields from Atlanta, Georgia. So she's been police chief now a little bit over 3 months or so, and is off to a very good start. She brought in Jackie Gwynn Villarreal as her assistant chief, and she's from Atlanta PD as well, and she happens to be a preacher also. But they're off to a strong start. Look, policing in America is a transition point, in my view. The old way of policing.
Great. I don't know what happened, but my internet went off.
Okay.
I got you back though.
All right.
So you were talking about how many people, citizens, and on the vetting committee,
advisory committee. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So their job was to take the 28 applicants, work with our consultant, and get that down to a manageable number that I could review. So I reviewed like the top 7 candidates or so. They came back with a recommendation in priority order for the top 3, I believe it was. But they said, look, there's one that totally stands out from everybody else. And so that's when I got involved in the interviewing process, because it's very important that the police chief shares the culture that I have relative to where we want to take the police department and policing. So Chief Erica Shields was chosen, former chief of the Atlanta Police Department. And then she brought her number 2 with her, Colonel or Assistant Chief Jackie Gwynn Villarreal, who also happens to be a preacher. But they're off to a very strong start, establishing credibility in the community. I knew it would be a controversial decision, Janice, because Chief Shields had been part of the police force that experienced a killing, officer-involved killing in Atlanta as well, and it was fairly high profile. So
and recent, and recent.
Last June.
Right.
So I kind of looked at it and said, all right, look at all these attributes where she by far is the best. I mean, and then she had a tragedy in her police force as well. So the question is, it's like an entrepreneur or somebody, let's say in show business that, they fail, but they come back hard and they're even better after they fail because of what they've learned. And so that was the bet that I made on Erica Shields. And I said, this will either be one of my all-time bad decisions or all-time good decisions. And so far, I think it's an all-time good decision. And based on how the community is reacting to her and our assistant chief, who were more in that category of this was a really good decision because she, think about this, she's a white gay woman that's the chief of police, so she's faced a lot of obstacles in her life in terms of this policing profession in a city that's majority black, with a police force that's majority black, in the civil rights capital of the country, Atlanta. Uh,
Okay.
and so all of that she brought with her, and her view on social justice and racial justice really was an excellent fit with where I am trying to take our police force and where I think policing in America needs to go. Because policing in America is at a crossroads.
Absolutely.
It's a legitimacy crisis with our communities. And if there's not police community legitimacy and only the community decides to do that, you
Hmm.
cannot co-produce public safety, what ultimately is what needs to happen, right? So that
Okay.
our community feels like we are helping to create a safe environment with our police department through strategy, through practice, through constant feedback. And it takes the right kind of person, Janice, to have that mentality because much of the police force is a historically a we are going to tell you what to do and you need to obey.
You you mean them saying that
Yeah,
they were going to tell us what to do and we
yeah,
must obey.
right.
Okay.
And
Right.
that is deeply steeped in the history of our country, right? So when you think about a lot of the historical underpinnings, especially of the Black community's relationship to policing and or people that have power over them, that of
Hmm.
course started in the days of slavery, and so it
Right.
has been a
That's how they
dramatic.
got police because police
Exactly,
were slave hunters.
exactly. So that's gone on for generation and generation, and certainly it's not as it was in the slave hunting days, but there are instances where that is reminded that vestiges of that are still in place, and
Right.
that needs to be dismantled aggressively. And that's what Chief Shields and the team are in the process of doing it. So we need a culture change, and so I needed to bring in an outsider to help affect that as well. So far we're making progress, but it's always going to be uh, lots of work needed to be done. We're just getting started, but I'm determined. I've got about 20 and a half months left in office that when I leave, the Louisville Metro Police Department will be seen as one of the models of the country for police community legitimacy, because our involvement with our most affected citizens impacted by policing. So anyway, we're off to, we got a good plan. We're executing it. We're working hard.
Okay. So now, so the FOP is not going to try to run the LMPD because I see them doing a whole lot of flexing. You know what I'm saying? And I'm trying to figure out now, do they run the police department or and the culture that we have? I had an interview the other day with Betty Baye, and she made mention of years ago that when she was doing an article, she did an article about the Klan in our police department here in Louisville. So, and I'm wondering if our police department, the culture of it is generational. You know, we say we have generational incarceration, but I think we may have a little generational um, involvement of from parent, grandfather, and father and son infiltrating our police department because it doesn't seem as though protect and serve. Those words are very important to me, Greg. I mean, I've got a husband. You know, uh, I've got nieces and nephews coming up. Even myself, I said, now if a police was to stop me, Greg, I'm gonna tell you, every time you see me, I'm nice, Janice, and we have a good
Yeah.
time. But see, now somebody stop me and tell me something about my headlight is out. I don't have, I'm gonna have something to say. And then I think about that. Then I said, my husband told me that, but I better come home. I said, okay. I said, but I've got a niece who's got a mouth like a sailor. You know what I'm saying? So there's a fear in our community
Yeah.
about our children going to the store, by themselves or being in situations. And I'm just praying that you're able to make a difference with that because That's important to us. I don't think we want to live in a city where we know what's coming. And everybody, when the police stops you, well, you get a little antsy anyway. But
Everybody. But there has
knowing
to
that,
be equal. There has to be equal policing, Janice. Right. So it doesn't matter if you're in Prospect or if you're in the California neighborhood. Policing has to be practiced the same. Facts are it hadn't been. So we've got
right,
a police chief that speaks to that, that's training to that. So I'm optimistic that we're going to be on the kind of at the head of this change that's taking place. I'm glad that it's being talked about all over the country. I'm putting together right now a summit on reimagining public safety and issues around gun violence and issues around equal application of the
hmm
law here in mid-May for the United States Conference of Mayors. I'm currently the president of that. So it's given me a
okay,
great platform to really drill down into some of these issues. And all of America is talking about this because the
right.
current condition we're in is not acceptable.
It's
And
not
it's,
sustainable. It's like
well,
we're sitting on a bomb waiting
well,
to go off.
and here's what I say to people. It's not sustainable morally. It's not sustainable
Absolutely.
economically. It's
Right.
not sustainable from a public safety standpoint. So if I can't get you in your heart from a moral standpoint, I need to get you through either you understanding the economics of this don't work out, something as crude as, riots are bad for business, okay?
Right.
Or or if everybody doesn't have an equal opportunity to advance in life, where's your workforce going to come from?
Right.
Or if everybody's not making a family supporting wage, who's going to buy your stuff? Okay, so maybe you don't accept the moral argument, but accept the economic argument. And then finally, on the public safety realm, I mean, you can see what happens when people have said, I've had enough.
Right.
Now, one of the good things about the summer of 2020 was when you looked at the crowds of demonstrators, you saw black people, you saw white
Right.
people, you saw brown people, much
The
more
mix.
representative. And to your
Right.
earlier point, the youth were very highly represented, which they always are, but I find
Well, the
that
youth are a movement. The youth is what makes it a movement, especially in civil rights.
yeah, no, and I find that all very promising. And so, I kind of it puts me in an interesting position because a lot of people look at me and say, well, he's the man, he's the mayor, he's the establishment. If I wasn't the mayor, I would be protesting. Okay, I mean
Okay.
I came into this business, being raised as a social justice background in my life in the Catholic tradition and the Jesuit tradition. And that's who I am. It's just you've got all these things you're balancing. How do you keep a city together in the middle of civil unrest,
Right.
not just in our city, but all over the country? How does that relate to police transformation? So as we went through this whole issue, and I said, I want a top to bottom review of the police department. Well, some people would say, well, you're going to find out bad things. Are you sure you want people to know that? I said, absolutely. I want
Yes.
people to, I don't represent like just the police department or city government. I represent the people of Louisville. Okay.
Right.
So if there's something that's not working within government,
Right.
my job's not to defend government. It's to find out how we root out any things that aren't working and put something good in their place. So anytime you can find weakness or areas for improvement, I mean, I'm all over that because that's going to benefit obviously the entire population. And it gets more difficult as like when we both have a few birthdays on us right now. I know you're still a very young woman, Janice, but
Hey, got
we've
that
all
right.
been beat up in life a little bit. So
Yeah.
things sometimes aren't as easy as what they appear they should be in terms of changing,
Right.
but you always want to be working toward that end because when you do change, you got to have enough people along with you that the change is in fact sustainable. So that really, to me, is where I want people to hold me accountable. Is when I say we're making progress in our advancing racial equity work. It's like, yeah, we are making progress. We did our first 10 years before we had the troubles of
Right.
2021 or
Right.
2020. But are we
Yeah.
moving fast enough? Are we doing enough? Do we have enough people with us? Um, this is a really interesting time right now. I mean, think about the transition that's been made in the president of the United States. I mean, there could hardly be more difference between,
Hallelujah.
right. So Trump and Biden, and you got President Biden right now coming out with the American Rescue Plan, the American Jobs Plan, the American Family Plan in the next couple of weeks. That is fundamentally redefining our responsibilities to each other as citizens. Kind of that's how you define democracy, right? It's like nobody should be without a house. Nobody should be living in poverty. Everybody should have food. These basics so that you can realize your full human potential.
Right.
That's the goal of our city value of compassion. So it is an extraordinarily stimulating time, and I'm very grateful to kind of be in public service at this point in my life to see what kind of progress we can make moving forward. All of this is wrapped with an umbrella of equity by people saying, whatever it is, 400 years, 300 years, 200 years of inequity in our country, we cannot realize who we are as a country with that inequity baked in. So that means if these policies are institutionally racialized, boom, gone. If they've been taken out, but they're still practiced, how do you root that out? So this is really, I'm very pleased. There's more conversation taking place around racism and equity than any time in my life right now. So,
Yeah,
and more
mine
people at
too.
the table. And more white people, that
Getting involved in it.
getting involved and being comfortable having the conversation. Because I can tell you, when I first talk about white privilege or white supremacy with white crowds, man, I see, people start kind of shaking in their seats like this.
Right.
But the second time I talk to them about it, some people say, I've been thinking about that. I want to learn more about it.
A
It's
little
like,
more receptive.
yeah. So, I mean,
Well,
that's another part
Greg,
of the
let me
movement.
say this. When you say the moral approach, because it is about we have to change people's hearts, to get them to change their behaviors, and a lot of being able to see the black and white mix, the multicultural mix of protesters all over the country. Then we say not just all over the country, all over the world.
Right.
That it wasn't just issues that we were facing over here in America, but it was all over Europe. That people were uniting and standing up and for that cause. And we have to work on changing people's hearts. And there's the moral fiber of our community is really what's going to save our democracy if we can get to that.
Right. Well, I
To
really,
change people's
yeah,
hearts.
I really appreciate you saying that because, the Dalai Lama, who's been like what I call a strategic partner of the city, as we call ourselves a city of compassion. I get
Right.
criticized for that. People say, was a compassionate city do what we did in 2020? I said, a compassionate city is always going to try to do better. Okay. You cannot, because you fall down, there's no perfect person out there. It's how you get back up and do you keep moving toward this area where everybody wants to do better. But, the Dalai Lama talks about, what the most important thing is love, kindness, compassion. Okay. Secondary differences are language, skin color, all these other things. But those are secondary. We've got to bring everybody together around these values that you're talking about to me, which is the moral question, right?
The moral
is, do you believe,
absolutely.
should where somebody was born determine the rest of that person's life?
Right.
No, that's wrong.
No.
So that's a moral decision.
Right.
And then so why, let's say you were born into affluent situation or whatever it might be, and this person was born into a situation of underinvestment. Is that fair?
No.
And I think only if you say it's fair, it's just because you're greedy, and greed's never going to win the day.
Yeah.
I mean, that's behind so much of racism, whatever it might be, whether it's black, white in America, whether it's Euro or Arab in, the immigration that's taking
greed and control.
Right. Okay. So,
Yeah.
so how can you wrap your arms around any good religious book and rationalize that?
Right.
I mean, that's what frustrates me when I hear people, good religious people, but all of a sudden it's like, man,
Good
you're
Christians.
racist.
Good
That's
Christians
what you are.
that hate black folks.
Right. Right.
I don't get it either.
But I do think, so why, and it's just especially a question for the majority, racial population right now is, if it's not working at home, where do these other conversations come into play, or where do these life experiences come into play? And, I'm a big believer that we should have some type of universal service requirement for everybody in our country. And back in the day, it was the armed forces.
Peace Corps.
Yeah, but why not Peace Corps, domestic Peace Corps, so that some
That we work together.
yeah, some white East End kid is in a trench with some, West End Louisville kid, some rural Appalachian kid, and they're like, you know what? I really thought we were all different, but we're kind of the same, aren't we?
Right. And
And
they can bond friendships. You
exactly.
don't have to, everybody of the same color is not just skin folks, that not kin folks, as they say. But you bond relationships.
No, and that's exactly right. Because what I find, Janice, and when I'm dealing with people that I feel have kind of a narrow viewpoint, I don't want to call them racist or whatever, but it's lack of
But you can
experience.
you can on this show. You can say they racist.
Well, what it is because of isolation.
Right.
It's lack of exposure. And so they're raised in an environment where they're taught to fear people that are different than
Yeah.
they are. So
Okay.
how do we then as a country say, okay, if it's not going to happen in every home, how do we construct these systems to deconstruct hatred? All right. So
Right.
maybe universal service is another way, but maybe it's some type of civics lesson or something like that. I'm not sure. But what we
Right.
have to really be thinking about as a country is we're getting the results we have right now because of the way our systems are designed. And these results are not working. Now, I'm very
Right.
happy, as I said, that Joe Biden is trying to disrupt these systems. And it's
Right.
very critical in my mind that the American Jobs Plan and the American Family Plan get passed in some type of way because they are totally redesigning the systems that are giving us the results that we have right now.
Right.
So it's, as I said, it's an exciting time where we got to stay focused. And unlike the 1960s, where white America took their eye off the ball, we all need to hold each other accountable where white America doesn't do that. And guess what? White America in 20 to 25 years is not going to be the majority population anymore.
Well, that's
So,
why the fight is now.
well,
That's why the struggle is on now to change the dynamics. Okay, let me go here with you. I think I'm seeing, Atlanta being upset about the games being moved, right?
yep,
But the All-Star game.
yep.
So, but to me, and I saw that the mayor was upset, and I'm saying, so what would you prefer to have? A baseball game on one day, or the right to vote for yourself, your children, your children's children for the rest of their lives? I don't understand the question into that, because we have to, when we look at putting our arms around humanity, we've got to look at this is a human problem, and to change those minds and those hearts, because it seems like there is a concerted effort to overthrow, number one, our democracy. They don't want us to vote. They don't want us to, and black folks embrace white folks. You can go anywhere in the city if they didn't know you was the mayor, and you could be in a crowd of black people. Ain't nobody gonna bother you. But just like white people can go where they want amongst us, but it's not accepting us. It's a hard pill to swallow, but it's a hard pill to swallow to know that I live in a city that has some of that mentality. That's this has all been very um it's been a little bit stressful to me. That's why I started the show. They always say, oh, they don't want to talk about race, don't want to talk about race. I said, well, it seems like now's a good time we can start talking about
Oh, I
race.
love talking about race because what else should we be talking about?
No,
How's the weather,
absolutely.
Janice? Oh, great.
No, no,
Okay.
thank you. No,
No,
thank you.
how about if we make a difference? And the
Absolutely.
issue why these discussions are important is just because you never know. But I've seen it in my work is that because you don't know when someone's going to be comfortable talking about race, and I'm talking about primarily white people now.
Right.
And so when they become comfortable is when the door starts opening up. Not that we need their permission or anything, but look,
Absolutely not.
we need everybody at the table to make this happen.
Right.
So until the government changes some things like what Biden's talking about, the more people we have at the table, the better. Okay.
Okay.
So
So now you said you got about 20 months left,
yeah.
right? So tell me, are there what are some of your ideas that you have to put in place that would make Louisville the true city of compassion, or put us in a better position that when you leave, that we're not still walking around being fearful because of the structures of our city government? and our policing? Are there things that you have in mind that you want to see? I wanted to mention that, women, that qualified immunity. Tell me what you think about that, because if New York can get rid of it, I think every police department in the country could get rid of qualified immunity.
Yeah, so qualified immunity, everybody knows, is gives you certain protections as a public employee that theoretically allow you to exercise your judgment and do your job. So where it's criticized most often is, let's say, if someone is killed by someone that's a member of the government, a police officer, whomever it might be, that there's qualified immunity that disallows the prosecution of that person unless they have willfully violated the law. So that qualified immunity is just not a blanket protection. So you'll see that, let's say, for instance, in the George Floyd trial that's going on up in Minneapolis right now. So there's a lot of people that say, there should be no qualified immunity. The issue with that is then, will people work for government? Because government in and of itself, you're constantly making decisions that are impacting people. And so if you can be held to a different, lower standard than others, that's a problem. But that's kind of the basis of what qualified immunity is. It does not give you a blanket agreement or approval to do anything you want, but it does provide certain protection. So, I'm a business guy that just happens to be mayor now for a little over 10 years. I understand that more. So, but there can never be any abuse of the law, anybody thinking they're above the law. And I think, this is one of the reasons why this civilian review board that we're putting in place is so important, because most folks don't have visibility into these issues. And that's
Right.
one of the purposes of the civilian review board, is for all this to be much more transparent, and for the civilian review board of 11 people to be able to translate a lot of this stuff for our day in and day out citizens that just aren't as close to it as I am or as you are, that you follow it through. So I'm hopeful that's going to be helping.
So you got kind of ticked off the other day when the legislators up in Frankfurt decided not to vote about that subpoena.
Yeah. Well, because here's why. It's our number one priority, right? We put the civilian review board in place. They'll be able to do a lot of good work without the subpoena, but we need the subpoena in kind of unusual circumstances. So we'll have another shot at going through Frankfurt this next legislative session. But so what do? They put in a bill that's unworkable, number one, on subpoena. And then they say, well, and while we're at that, we want to allow cities to be annexed in a different way. We want the Metro Council to be involved in all settlement discussions. We want the mayor to be run on a nonpartisan fashion and be term limited. I mean, what's that have to do with subpoenas? Nothing. But
they just want to restructure a city government.
Well, and
period.
they want to use the subpoena as an excuse to do that. They're two totally different things.
Right.
And the citizens of Jefferson County voted on merged government. So
Right.
put it back to the citizens if you want to ask these questions, but don't
Right.
do that by a Republican-dominated legislature
Right.
in Frankfurt. And I'm just saying that because Louisville is Democrat dominated.
Right.
Because you can't get it done when you try to do it by the people, for the people. So this is what bad government is. And this is why people get, turned off by government and get cynical around government. And that's why I got involved with public service, Janice. That's where we connected back in the day. It's like, I'm just a regular guy that's had enough, so I'm going to try to make a difference. Now people think like I'm the man. I've been a lifelong politician. I'm the same guy. I'll be gone in 20 months. I hope somebody else then can try to move it on down the field a little bit more. But folks that are in this for their whole careers, I don't know. It's unusual for them to be exemplary when they're in that long.
And to be objective.
Right.
You can't be objective if you're trying to make sure that you can give yourself a pay raise, Mitch McConnell. That nobody else can get a raise, but you can get a raise.
Somehow it's okay for everybody to be able to walk down Main Street with an assault rifle on their back, and that's cool.
No.
Mm-hmm. And there's 100 people dying every day in America from gun violence.
Yeah.
That's the biggest public health crisis we've got in the country.
Yeah. You know, Charlotte Cooper Stallett was my roommate at Kentucky State.
I'm sorry.
And she lost her husband for
I'm
somebody going in the grocery store. I mean, it's sickening. It's sickening, but
Well,
I'm
what's
just
sickening
really
is
kind of,
what's sickening is the people that could do something about it sit on their hands,
yeah, yeah. And
follow the
some of
money.
that has to change. All of that has to change, Greg. Just it's all gonna have to. It's gonna come to a head, and I don't want to. I don't want to say it in a way that I'm promoting or provoking anything. But this is a keg of dynamite right here. This whole issue, this whole George Floyd trial. It's almost like OJ. In a sense,
Yeah.
King, Rodney King. It's the same. We got the same thing every 10, 15 years. We're faced with this, but we just don't want to keep continuing to have to be faced with it.
Yeah.
And hopefully there'll be more people that are of the like mind as you, to want a more compassionate world to live in, for people to feel safe, and say that it's enough. It's enough
Yeah.
that either for economics or safety, or from a moral standpoint, that
Well,
it's enough.
yeah. So I don't, I'm more optimistic than I ever have been, just because things are kind of
Really.
reaching this boil, and I see a lot more good in terms of people coming out. And when you see folks that are trying to repress further or do this, they're getting a lot more pushback.
Hmm.
And that's why, and certainly the civil rights movement taught us all this, or major evil like what took place in Germany in World War II. When if you don't stand up and say something, you can be next.
Or
And so,
major evil that took over the last 4 years of our lives, having
yeah,
us holding our breath. Can't
yeah,
breathe. The man sucked up all the air out of the oxygen. Oxygen
yeah,
out of the air.
yeah. No, that too. But I mean, you
Yes.
can imagine, like
Crazy.
mayors all over the country were being attacked every day,
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
day. And we've gone from kind of the outhouse and being attacked every day to sitting at the dining room table with President Biden doing strategic planning together on how we can make our country a better place for everybody.
Yeah.
What a lift. What a joy to be participating in that
I
right
mean, I mean, it was a joy. It was like the movie. We were all just waiting to exhale.
now. And then the cherry on the top was the Georgia Senate elections. Okay. And what a coincidence that what's the first state to roll back some of their voting access? Wasn't that Georgia, Janice? Yeah, I think it was. Well, if you don't like the way that turned out, just change the rules, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess that's what they think they can do. But
But I don't
as
think
long
it's
as
going
we
to be.
have the right to vote, we can make a difference, and we
Yeah,
will make a difference.
yeah. And I don't think it's going to work this time. But I do think, and I'm hopefully that's one of the things that's going to come out of the demonstrations of 20 is that people are going to say, "I need to vote. I need to vote." That
Right.
we're in all this. We saw a little bit of that in the presidential election, but not nearly as much as what we should be.
Right.
We should be seeing 80-90% of Americans voting,
Right.
and
Right.
we'll keep working.
Okay. Well, I know you're gonna keep working the next 20 months. If you got something good you want to share with my audience, you're more than welcome to come back.
Well, I
Take
appreciate
care of your
that.
family. Tell everybody I said hello.
Well, I
How's your
appreciate that.
mom and dad doing?
They'll be 88 and 89 this year, so I'm very blessed.
Yeah.
Still have them there. You know how important that was. I, still think about you and your mom.
Yeah.
Uh, so, but they're 88 and 89.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. She was
but
93.
yeah, well, that's a blessing, and so uh, it's special.
Yeah.
It's and especially like we're not kids anymore, but we're still kids to our moms and
To
our
our
dads,
parents. You're right.
and I'm one of five kids. When I talk like that, I say I'm one of five kids. And one of us are with mom and dad, trying to help them out. Once a week, they say, "Well, I never thought about you as a kid." It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'll always be
Yes.
a kid.
Yeah. Yeah. So Greg, so I know we mentioned it. We don't know what's gonna happen with the dirt bowl, huh?
Well, the Dirt Bowl, I was really proud. I was kind of the mayor that brought the Dirt Bowl back because it's a big part of the
Yeah, you did.
legacy
Yeah,
and
you did.
history. And I think you had something to do with the Dirt Bowl, Janice. I can't quite remember what it was, but I know I saw you
Little
down there.
something, something.
You might have been a co-founder of the Dirt Bowl. Now that I think about that, with Big Ben Watkins,
Yeah.
and you all are quite the duo. I mean, between you and Ben, what's probably got an 18-inch height difference or something like that. But
Well,
you had,
he was the basketball player. I was the cheerleader.
yeah, yeah. Well, you were the troublemaker and the energy behind that as well. You got a motor that won't stop, which was really, that's is a huge thing. And isn't that funny? Like when you were young like that, and you were like co-founding the Dirt Bowl, you didn't realize how probably
Not at all.
consequential that was.
Not at all. When I came back home and they were saying, Janice, didn't you have something to do with starting the Dirt Bowl? And I was like, yeah, uh, it's still going on. I was like, what? And then we came up before I knew it, we were on 50 years. I'm saying
Yeah.
now, I never knew that the Dirt Bowl would have been a part of my legacy.
Well, so tell me just a little bit about that. I know this is your show, but I was like, when you
You
were
can you
asked
can
to
ask
put
me a
the Dirt
question.
Bowl together, yeah. So when you were asked to put the Dirt Bowl together, how did that take place? Were you working for the Parks Department at the time, or?
Ben and I worked, we were both assigned to Algonquin Park, and that's when the park was flourishing, had the swimming pool, the tennis courts. Um, I don't think we had a baseball field, but they used to practice a lot of baseball in the far field. And being a basketball player coming from, we're both out of college. We're on our summer break. Ben was Jackson State, and I'm up at Kentucky State, where I was a cheerleader. I was a cheerleader, Shawnee, for the whole junior high school. And so when we got together, it was like basketball is something that he and I both had in common. I even, little people don't know this, but I even played women's basketball at Kentucky State.
I knew that point guard.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Right.
But anyway, it was a no-brainer. He said, well, let's have some tournaments. So I sat down, I said, so what do we need? I mean, and everything was makeshift. That there were no lines on the court, only the court was surrounded by the dirt, and that's therefore the name, the Dirt Bowl.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So when we started it, and then it took off. It took off like wildfire in the middle of a period of time when there was civil unrest in our city, but there was none in that park.
Right. Yeah.
That was a safe zone. Everybody came to play, came to watch. We had no issues. Never. I don't ever remember anybody saying, call the police. You know what I'm saying? It didn't happen and then that was during the time when it was about, I just always think that Black folks are all about coming together because we could be about something different. But that was a time that, all the ball players were giving props to each other, and, they came from everywhere. I mean, I'm trying to think, UK players came, Indiana players came, and high school players came, kind of showed up some of the college players
Yeah.
on occasion.
Yeah.
But it made its mark. It had a life. It was bigger than us, to put it simply. It was just bigger than us, and it just persisted. And I'm proud to be a part of it. Absolutely. And I thank you for bringing it back.
Oh, well, what a pleasure for me just to be part of that little footnote in the history of it. But I think there's a lesson in that for young people, right? When they're doing something and they have an opportunity at it, is just do it well, and you never know what's going to happen as a result of it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
I never knew. I said, I'm in show business. I didn't know I didn't care about playing basketball. I watch a lot of basketball.
yeah.
Then I come home and they said, well, they're still playing the dirt ball. I said, you got to be joking.
Yeah.
So there we were.
No,
But
well,
I thank you for joining me, and good luck. I pray for you. I still believe that your heart is in the right place. I believe that your intentions are pure. So you're still my mayor. So
Well,
you got my vote.
well, I
Even though I
appreciate
can't
that.
vote for you anymore. You don't have
Yeah,
to worry
no,
about
this
no
will be the
more
last.
votes.
Yeah, I'll be
This
retiring
is
from
your
public.
last hoorah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
after that, wherever I can help the most people, I'll always be up for that. But probably not in elected office anywhere. I can't see what that would be. But it's been a great honor to have this and position, and it's allowed us to do a lot of good. And then let's be like the Muhammad Ali of mayors. It's like, okay, our city got knocked down a little bit, but we're definitely off the mat. We are doing the road work. We are swinging again, and we're going to end up winning the world championship. So it
Oh,
takes all of us to come together to get that done,
wow.
including
And
you,
on
Jen.
that note, thank you for joining me for dinner.
Okay, great
Take
to
care
see
of
you. Great
yourself.
to be with you. All right, take
All
care.
right, dog. You're going to come back now, right? Look,
Absolutely, I can't wait but it's got to be a real dinner.
okay. Yeah, I'll wait till we do the real dinners. And that's sooner than I think. It's going to be very
Yeah,
soon.
we'll be post-COVID pretty soon. So
Yeah.
look,
Okay.
that's good. We're coming out of it. But anyway, it's been great with you. Hey, by the way, I like the little roses on your set there. It's a little extra touch class.
Well, thank you, darling. Well, you see my girl. I found her in the store the other day. I said, "Oh, she's got to go home." Made me think about my mother. So
What's
that's
nice
why I
because
have
the
her
hat's
there.
right like on top of your head. I know you got it
Right.
all planned out. Nothing with Janice happens by chance. All right.
So
All
you
right. Well,
noticed that. Take
yeah.
care of yourself.
Thanks for being a great citizen. You take care.
I'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. All right. That was Mayor Greg Fisher. Well, we had a conversation. I hope you all heard some things that you needed to hear, because sometimes, when they do sound bites, you don't get to hear the full gist of what somebody's thinking, what they really want to say, or even enough time to explain some things to you. You know, somebody's calling me. They don't know. Jack, get my phone, please. Um, that made me forget everything I was saying. But anyway, he was. It was important for me to have the mayor, because as his friend and as a constituent, that I felt it gave me the right to be able to ask some questions that I was concerned about. And he addressed them. And so now after this, I'm going to have a drink for dinner, because I've been very excited about doing this. So I probably haven't eaten all day. Maybe the drink may not be the best thing to have. But, after having that conversation with Greg, I had thought about something, that, you know, the Louisville defender, Mr. Leslie is something. But Mr. Leslie had a front page cover, because, the show is about a conversation about racism and racist policies. And I've added on, and all things that uplift our African American community, because I want to do my part to be as helpful as I can be. And he had a front page cover that said, "When protests for justice have ended, when COVID-19 virus is under control, what will your life in Louisville be like?" Okay. Um, I couldn't sleep the other night thinking about. I wanted to answer that question, because Greg and I touched on it. It's a morality piece here. It's about, good Christians, people having good, true, and honest hearts. To thine own self be true. Um, that I heard Governor Kemp down in Atlanta say this was all about cancel culture. Well, let me tell you, this cancel culture is, yes, it is cancel culture. It is cancel, CANCEL, culture. That means what we need to cancel is we need to cancel hate. We need to cancel bigotry. We need to cancel racism. We need to cancel white supremacists. We need to cancel white supremacy. We need to cancel homelessness. We need to cancel hunger. We need to cancel all inequities and disparities. We need to cancel um, negative perceptions, even perceptions, because you're taught to hate. And I remember Doc Rivers from when he was still with the Clippers. He said, we love this country, but the country has a problem loving us back. You know, and like Greg said, I got some years on me now. I was one of those who was able to get my shots first. But after living this long, you're saying it's got to be getting better. It's got to get better. And I think everyone has a role to play. You have a role to play in your household, teaching your children. I don't have children, but everybody needs to teach their children about what's going on and about what they learn at Sunday school. You can't come home from church and be another individual. If you're going to be correct, you got to go all the way. But as a community, I think we're here to help each other. And as for my favorite movie, Jerry Maguire, help me help you, help me help you. It's not show me the money. It's help me to help you, to help me to help you. So on that note, I'm going to say, guess who's coming to dinner? It's dinner time somewhere. Bon appetit. I hope you enjoyed the show. Forgive me. I got a little. Greg, stay where you are. I'll be back. See you next time.